Entrepreneurship 101 is created to empower entrepreneurs all over the world. And today I have my special guest. She is the founder and CEO of Arden Coaching. Dynamic, relatable, smart guest, and of course, human side of leadership. No other than Miss Maren Perry.
Hi, Daniel. Good to be with you.
Welcome once again on Entrepreneurship 101, Miss Maren. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I can?
Absolutely. So, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I founded Arden Coaching 19 years ago. We are a leadership development firm focusing, as you said, on the human side of leadership. We make leaders better so their organizations thrive. And we're working all throughout the organization, from the very top with the CEO all the way down through their managers on leading better.
Leading better, yes. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Maren. Thank you for being part to all of my podcasts.
Thanks for
So,
inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
yes, looking forward for our coaching 101 because this is your expertise. And today let's talk about what CROs knows that CEOs often forget. The overlooked truth about people performance and profit. So Johnny C. Taylor Jr. of HRM says that CHRO is the only executive who must represent both and the employee and the employer, unlike the CFO, whose loyalty is clearly to profit.
Yeah, I think that's partially accurate. I mean, I would say that yes, the CHRO has a different lens through which they see the um, the profit and the people.
Mm-hmm.
But if the CFO is really interested in the numbers, they'll be interested in the people because the people are the business. Uh, I think that that quote is accurate in that the C-suite, the CEO and his or her team, their lens really is the health of the organization. They have to be looking out for the sake of the entire company. Um, the CHRO is focused on the people.
Mm-hmm.
And if the CFO, the chief financial officer, is really looking at the numbers, you will find that they often have a view to the people as well, because the people are what's doing the work, what's creating the culture, what's moving the organization forward, what is uh, innovating for the company and coming up with the next idea. In the age of AI, I think people will argue that perhaps people are less important. And I actually argue the opposite, that in the age of AI, tasks can be managed to some extent, many tasks can be managed through AI, which means that there is always a human being who's overseeing that. All of us have used AI, right? You know that it's not 100%
Yeah.
accurate, that it
Mm-hmm.
hallucinates, that you don't want it doing certain tasks for you, and some of that may change as our AI advances. But I
Mm.
think that as we integrate AI more and more, the humans are what is unique, right? AI cannot innovate in the same way that humans can. It cannot compile data and extract something that's unique, right? AI will recite back what it knows, like the large language models anyway, will recite back what it knows from a massive amount of data that no human could compile. But the next innovative idea will not come from AI. So circling back to the CFO and the CHRO, I think the CHRO has a unique understanding perhaps of the people, but everyone on that C-suite is obliged to recognize where people are prioritized in the company and what that means to the bottom line.
Very well said, Ms. Maran. CEOs often view HR as the enforcer or enforcer of their will, whether on return to office mandates or cost cutting. But you know that forcing compliance without buy-in the trigger quit and stay. But the employees disengage but don't leave. How do you convince a CEO focus on control that the soft stuff of culture is actually the hard stuff of productivity?
Mm, there's so much in that question, Daniel.
Mhm.
Yes. So I think HR is traditionally tasked with wearing too many hats. A lot falls under the people part of the organization, right? It's everything from leadership development to payroll. Those are very different skill sets. And yet HR is often tasked with holding all of that, everything from payroll and benefits to, compliance and workplace conflict and leadership development and succession planning. Like that is a tremendously diverse range of skills. So I think that the people side of that, sometimes the soft skill part, um, becomes a small percentage of what HR is doing overall. Uh, and in my personal opinion, it's often too small a percentage. That if you have too small an HR department, there's some things that have to get done, like payroll, that has to get done on Monday morning. Um, and so some of the more soft skill pieces get pushed to the side, which I think is incredibly short-sighted, because the ROI on developing soft skills has been shown to be sometimes 700% or more. Um, I defy you to choose a lot of other places where companies invest and get a 700% return, right? That's an extraordinary return on investment. Um, and I think that there are a lot of hidden ways that developing soft skills are reflected in the bottom line. I mean, developing soft skills is the core aspect of what managers really need to be responsible for. Now, people often get promoted beyond their subject matter expertise, right? Peter Principle. But they get promoted because of that expertise. And then they're in a role where they're expected to lead, but they haven't ever been trained in soft skills. And so they're in a very precarious position. Um, and yet, the number one reason that people have for leaving organizations is typically related to their manager, not the mission of the company, not the pay, not what their roles and responsibilities are, but the person that they interact with who's their manager. I think some of the recent statistics I saw say that even if people love their role, half of them will consider leaving a job because they don't like their manager. That's because of soft skills. That isn't because their manager, doesn't understand accounting, right? Typically, right? If you're an accountant, you're not leaving because your manager doesn't understand the subject matter. You're leaving because your manager doesn't treat you well, doesn't give you feedback, doesn't respond to you, doesn't give you opportunity, doesn't include you with higher level meetings and an opportunity to be seen, right? There are many reasons, but those are all soft skills, quote unquote. But they really relate to the hard bottom line. And I think that that's often severely underestimated.
Again, very well said, Ms. Maren. Research shows that CHROs perceive performance is uniquely dependent on their relationship with the CEO. Far more than any other C suite role, how does that power dynamic shape what they're willing to say in the room? And what is one thing they held back from telling a CEO that you now wish you said?
Oh, what a good question. I think that the CHROs typically understand people in a different way than some of the other C-suite, potentially. And as a result, they also see the CEO very clearly. And they know what people say about the CEO in a way that maybe the CFO doesn't hear, or the chief marketing officer doesn't hear, or the legal counsel doesn't hear, but that uh, the CHRO is very clear on. They understand what people say about the leadership team and specifically the CEO. And so the CHRO holds a lot of personal, not intimate, but personal information about the CEO and what their skill level is. And really, I believe it's the CHRO's role to impart that to the CEO as a matter of success, right? If you want your CEO to be successful, you need to share that people are afraid of her, or that people don't respect her, or that people avoid telling her the real issue, uh, and instead deflect to some other department or person. That is essential for the CEO to know. It is not necessarily easy information for them to hear. Um, I remember we were working with a client and I was working very closely with the CEO, and I was tasked on getting information about her and from her team and those around her. And it was, I had to give her some very challenging feedback. And actually, the others in the organization, including the CHRO, had been unwilling to say this to the CEO. But I had to tell the CEO that people were afraid of her. And she did not like that information. Um, but I felt like it was our obligation to say the truth to the person who really needed that information, because that will shape how she holds meetings, how she works with her team, how she does company wide calls. She's dealing with thousands of employees. If people are not going to tell her the truth to her face because they are afraid of her, that will impact their bottom line. And so in this case, it was us as an external partner that gave her that feedback. But ideally, that's your CHRO. You want to have a relationship with your CHRO where they can come and tell you that.
Certainly, Ms. Maren, when manpower costs consume over 50% of operating expenses, HR controls one of the largest levers in the business. Yet most CEOs still see HR as the cost center, not the profit driver. Is the perceptions the CEO's failure to understand HR or HR's failure to speak the language of business?
Oh, great question. Yes, both.
Both, yes.
um, I think that CEOs tend to silo um, operations from people, right? As though it isn't the people who are creating the operations, right? The operations happen because of systems, but also because of the people. So I think that it is a danger to separate those two and say, you HR department, you go and deal with the people. I'm going to deal with the operations and getting our core function accomplished. I think that's short-sighted. So I think it is uh, the responsibility of the CEO to ask questions of the CHRO and bring them into the conversation. I also think it's the CHRO's responsibility to demand a seat at the table, but they have to come prepared. You can't just come and talk about soft skills that people don't understand and don't think they care about. You have to bring numbers. You have to talk about the impact on the bottom line. You have to show what the attrition costs when someone leaves, when a manager is quote unquote bad, right? They're not developing their people. They're not responsive to their people, and people are leaving because of that manager. You need to show what those numbers are and what the attrition costs and what the devolution of the culture is costing the organization in terms of productivity and engagement. And these are not necessarily easy numbers to find or create, but it's essential if you're the CHRO to come with a business case for the people. That's what earns anybody a seat at the table in the C-suite, and the people person is no exception.
Indeed, very well said, Ms. Maran. You know that wellness program is not just about reducing stress; it's about improving focus and productivity. A diversity initiative is not just about representation; it's about unlocking innovation that drives revenue. Give me a specific example where you successfully reframe a people initiative as a business driver and how you made the case stick with skeptical CEO.
Mm. Reframing a people program as a business driver. Um, so we're an external partner. I'm not a CHRO, so I am not making this case to a CEO. But I am responsible for showing the impact of the programs that we do, right? So what I would say is that we have plenty of data for our programs that show the impact that the leadership development program has had on the initiatives that the participants are working on during the program. They're working on real initiatives in the company, in their real jobs, right? This is not theoretical on the side hypothetical leadership development, right? They're working both on developing leadership skills, but also applying that to their real work. So when we make a case for these programs, we show what it has meant at other organizations with our other clients and how those that program that we did had, say, 18 participants in it over the course of a year, and what projects they were working on in the company, and we measure the progress they make on those projects. And our CHRO partner will typically be able to quantify that and say, okay, well, that project moved forward X amount faster. That equates to Y number of hours paid at this rate. So they can actually put a dollar sign on the momentum created by those programs. Um, that's one way to make a case for the people programs being a driver of the revenue or the business results.
Ms. Barron, one expert argues that HR must anchor itself around three pillars: performance, delivery, and profitability. Yet most CHROs are still measured on attrition rates and time to hire. How do you shift the metrics that matter the CEO without being accused of trying to be something you're not?
Oh, wow. Well, I do think that one has to align on what the role's scope is. And so if you're hired as the CHRO, those are your metrics. If attrition is how you're going to be measured, then yes, you have to show up with those metrics. I do think there's some education that can come in. And in order to keep people, right, to keep your attrition rate low, to keep your engagement score high, you need other things, to your point: performance, delivery, right? All of those contribute to people wanting to stay. People want to stay when they feel accomplished, when they feel that they're contributing to something, when they have metrics that they can be successful at. So I think there can be some education and some shifting. You don't have to show up on day one with completely different metrics than you've been asked for. That wouldn't work in any role. But I do think you have to link the two. You have to help a CEO or anybody else that you're partnering with understand how you can help drive performance, how the cultural initiatives, how the leadership development, how that is driving engagement. What does that mean for attrition? But what does that mean for performance? What does that mean for revenue? You know, what are the other things that you can bring aside from attrition? Yes, bring the metrics you're expected to bring, but also educate the people that you're reporting to on how those are related to some other things that you find essential to your position. I think it's important for HR to track all those things. They're often in the situation where they are um, asked to track lagging performance, but they don't necessarily have as many metrics for showing when people are on target. And I think that's a missing.
Certainly. So here's the staggering number: only 2% of CHROs believe the performance management system actually works, yet companies pour millions of hours and dollars into annual revenues. If you, as a CHROs, know the system is broken, why does it persist? And what the real cause of that charade?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's because you're putting money in the wrong things. You know,
Hmm.
it does cost millions of dollars to have a performance management system, that, your number is 2% of people think it's doing a good job. That's extraordinarily low. I think that the issue is not typically the software. The software is probably fine, but it's the follow through that I typically see as lacking, the integration, the real adoption of that software. Um, Often it is rolled out as a way to track something as though the thing you're tracking, first of all, exists. Second of all, is strong enough to track. And thirdly, has the buy-in of everybody about how we're going to track it and why it's important. Because what I see is that most of the time, the performance metrics that are tracked are an add-on. It's, oh, it's time for performance review. I better get in there and put some things in there. Or, oh, I have a meeting coming up. I need to go and ask people for their feedback on this thing. It's not seen as a real true driver of performance. It's seen as an add-on after the fact to track something. And no one is bought into that. No one likes to do paperwork for paperwork's sake. And while it's digital, it's essentially paperwork for paperwork's sake. If no one sees it as essential and tied to the goals and helping them perform and getting them feedback and helping them be better at what they're doing. So I think the adoption, the integration, the rollout, the alignment with the company's strategy, those are the parts that are missing. It's not typically the software. You can get software to do anything you want. So usually I think it's not the software itself, it's the adoption and strategy behind it that's lacking.
Miss Maren, only 2 to 3% of CHROs ever make to CEO compared to 33% of COOs and 20% of sales leaders. Is that because CHROs is lack of commercial fluency or because boards simply can't imagine a people person running APAL?
Again, I'm going to go with yes. I think it's both. I think that CHROs are often, in some organizations, I shouldn't say across the board, but in some organizations, they are seen, as you say, as a people person, not a business person. And I think that's a fault of many CHROs that they are not linking those two. Back to the conversation we just had on, is it the CHRO or is it the CEO? Yes. I think that you have to, as a CHRO, be fluent in the other competencies and departments. No one would allow a COO to not understand delivery, right? But somehow we say a COO, it's okay if they don't understand HR. Well, I disagree with that. I think that anybody in the C-suite needs to be on that core team playing for the company's sake. And you're not going to be an expert outside of your subject matter expertise, but you need to be fluent enough in all those areas if you're ever interested in being the CEO. Now, it may be an interest level. I don't know what percentage in the statistic you shared want to be CEO, right? You may
Sure.
say, oh, it's such different competencies that it's not a good fit. Now, I don't know that it's any different in competency than a COO or a CFO or CMO. But I do think that most companies give more weight to operations and the core function of the business than they do to other functions. Whether that, I mean, sales drives revenue, so they kind of get a pass, right? And CFO, everybody's focused on the numbers. But anybody else, I would be curious in your numbers what the stat is for, chief marketing officers or
Mhm.
legal, right? Like those people are probably also not the first in line for CEO. Operations gets a lot more weight in a lot of companies. But really, as CEO, and I say this as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, and as someone who works with many, many CEOs, the best are competent across the board and are great leaders and ask great questions of the people on their team. They're able to make great decisions with lots of different bits of information. They are not the smartest person in the room necessarily, in one of those functions. They hire the smartest people in the room, but their job is to make the decision and run the team. And so which leaders on your C-suite are going to be best at that? It may be the COO, but it may not be. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Very well said, Miss Maren. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course my book 101 review in sixth season two, comedy 101 fourth season, and my food 101 in sixth season two, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 our fifth season, science 101, sex 101 in its fourth season, trivia 101, motivation 101, spiritual awakening, entrepreneurship 101, law 101, mental health 101, and my new podcast additional to universal podcast coaching 101, and of course my bible verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So finally, Miss Maren, if here's the question every CHRO has answered silently in their own head. If you could whisper one piece of unfiltered truth into your CEO's ear without politics, without career risk, without softening the edge, what would it be? And why have you said it loud?
I don't know why they may not say it loud, but I think that the thing most CHROs would say is value your people.
Mm, certainly value your people because they are the one creating money. Definitely. So, Miss Maren, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Oh, sure. So Arden Coaching is my company, ARDEN coaching.com. And if you go to ardencoaching.com and mention Entrepreneurship 101 in our contact form, I'm happy to give you a complimentary organizational assessment so you can take a look at your leaders and assess how they're doing on our 8 leadership dimensions.
Certainly. Yes, people, let's support Miss Maren Perry because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering coaching to rise. So, Miss Maren, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. Such a pleasure. Great questions.
Monica, people, see you soon. Likewise, Miss Maren, empowering answer.